Let's take a look at solving equations using the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is here in green. It's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And that is developed from actually completing the square of the standard form of a quadratic equation, which is ax squared plus by, or excuse me, plus bx, plus c, okay? And if you complete the square on that, you'll end up with the quadratic formula for the solution. So, we use the quadratic formula to solve any quadratic equations. It always will work. Sometimes there might be other methods that might be easier, but the quadratic formula will always work. So we'll keep that in our back pocket. The first thing that we need to do is figure out what the a, b, and c are. And to pick those out, I need to have the equation that I'm solving in standard form. So let's take a look at this one right here first. In this one, we've got, does it look like that? Well, sure enough, it does. It's x squared minus 3x minus 18. That's in standard form. So we're going to pick out our a, b, and c. My a is the coefficient right here, so that's 1. I'm just going to write what they equal. So a equals 1. B is the coefficient of the x term, so that is negative 3. And then finally, c is the constant term, so that's negative 18. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is go ahead and fill those things into the quadratic formula. So I get x equals negative b, so it's negative 3, well that would be plus 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared. My b is still negative 3, so negative 3 squared minus 4 times a, well a is 1, so 4 times 1 times c, which is negative 18. Okay, so now over to a. Then, oops, and I know my a is 1, so let's put that in there. Alright, then once I get everything filled into the quadratic formula, then I just go ahead and start simplifying. So first thing I'm going to do is go inside the square root there and clean up. So we've got 3 plus or minus, that's still on the outside there. And then I've got the square root of negative 3 squared is negative 3 times negative 3, which is 9. Then we've got negative 4 times 1, well that's just negative 4. Then times negative 18, and that's going to give us 72. So I have plus 72. And that's all over 2 times 1, which is just 2. Okay, a little bit simpler to deal with now. So then I'm going to add that stuff inside the square root. So we have 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 plus 72, which is 81, all over 2. Okay, then finally we're going to take that square root of 81. In this case it works out nicely, so we have 9 plus or minus 9 over 2. Now, there's two solutions here. There's 3 plus 9 over 2, and then there's 3 minus 9 over 2. I need to consider both of those solutions. So I'm going to start with the plus one, so it's 3 plus 9, which would be 12, over 2. So that's one of my solutions, 12 over 2. Oops, that's not 2. Getting ahead of myself. 12 over 2, which is going to be equal to 6. And then my other one is going to be 3 minus 9, which is negative 6 over 2, which is going to simplify to negative 3. So my solutions for this quadratic equation right here are 6 and negative 3. Now, just a note about the square root stuff. If you get a square root that isn't a perfect square, follow what you're asked to do. Sometimes you'll be asked to give a decimal approximation for that square root, and other times you'll be asked to just leave it depending on what math class you're in and that sort of thing. So follow what the problem's asking you to do. Alright, let's take a look at this next one up here. Now remember, the first step is to make sure it's in standard form. Is this one in standard form? No. So I need to take that 44 over to the other side there. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 44 to get it over to the left side. So minus 44. So that's going to give me, I'm going to write it above just to make sure I've got room here, x squared minus 7x minus 44 equals 0. Okay, now it's in standard form. So I'm going to go ahead and pick out my a, b, and c. In this case, we notice here's the a of 1, the b is negative 7, the c is negative 44. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill those things in. We get x equals negative b. Well, my b in this case is negative 7, so negative 7 would be positive 7. So 7 plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 7 squared, minus 4 times a is 1, times c, which is negative 44, all over 2a. And again, a is 1. Okay, so then I've got everything filled in, so we go ahead and start simplifying. So here I'm going to get, oops, let me make sure I've got space here. I'm just going to say equals 7 plus or minus the square root. Negative 7 squared is 49. Excuse me. Then we've got negative 4 times 1, which is negative 4. Then negative 4 times negative 44 is 176, so it's plus 176 all over 2, because 2 times 1. Then I've got 7 plus or minus, and I'm going to do this in one step here. 49 plus 176 would be 225. The square root of that gives me 15. So I have 15, 7 plus or minus 15 over 2. Then, remember, two solutions are sitting there. So 7 plus 15 would be 22 over 2, which is 11. So that's one solution. X equals 11. And my other solution is going to be 7 minus 15, which would be negative 8 over 2. So negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. So my two solutions in this case are 11 and negative 4. Alright, then, finally, last one. Let's take a look at what we can do here. In this one, same situation. We start by making sure it's in standard form. So there's standard form. Is it in standard form? Sure enough. So let's go ahead and fill it into the quadratic formula. So we have x equals negative b. In this case, b is 6, so it's going to be negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times, in this case, a is 8. Then we've got times c, which is negative 5, all over 2 times a, which is 2 times 8 in this case. Then that's going to be equal to negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared is 36. Then we've got negative 4 times 8, which is negative 32. Then negative 32 times negative 5 is going to give me plus 160. So I go plus 160 all over 16. Okay? Then keep going here. We've got negative 6 plus or minus the square root of, let's do this in one step to save some space. It's going to be 196. We add those two together. 196 is a perfect square, so that the square root there is 14. So we have 14 all over 16. Then I've got two solutions, remember, plus and minus. So negative 6 plus 14, well, that would be 8 over 16. So we have 8 over 16. That would simplify to 1/2 for one of our solutions. And my second solution is going to be negative 6 minus 14. So that's going to be negative 20 over 16, which I can simplify by dividing by 4 on the top and the bottom. So that's going to give me negative 5 over 4. So for this one, my solutions are 1/2 and negative 5 over 4. To solve equations using the quadratic formula, remember that the quadratic formula will work for all quadratic equations. Now, it's not the easiest, cleanest method here, but it will work all the time. There's quite a bit of things going on here, but it will always work. Sometimes another method might be better, but quadratic formula will always work to solve those quadratic equations. There's lots of different ways to help you remember that, but that's a good one to get implanted in the old memory bank. Hope this video is helpful. Keep working hard on your math, and I know you'll do great.